U.S. Hispanic community, diversity and socioeconomic variation. Background. Hispanics are the most diverse ethnic group in America, with their differences being indicated by race, regional separations, national origins, economics, and history of migration. The Mexican Americans and the Puerto Ricans are of American origin by birth, while Cubans entered the United States as political refugees. The latter is said to be of mixed African, native, and white racial heritages, whereas the former were large of European or white ancestry. According to Rodriguez, some Mexicans have lived for long in the U.S. and qualify for amnesty but not citizenship, while others work in the U.S. to support a family in Mexico, while others are illegally present in the country, undocumented aliens. Differences can even be noted within the subgroups of the group components of the Hispanic community. For example, those Mexican Americans living in New Mexico have differences in dialect, self-identification, occupational status, and economic status from those in places like Texas, California, and Arizona. In the 1960s, wave of Cuban immigrants was largely middle-class and educated, and the group had professionals, whereas the Mexican Americans and the Puerto Ricans happened to be the working class, many of whom were menial laborers. Mexican Americans and Cubans, mostly, have been economically successful, whereas the majority of Hispanics continue to experience poverty and discrimination. Politically, all Hispanics do not express support for one party through voting as compared to African Americans. Language and culture. Recent immigration is what makes the Spanish language dominant among Mexican Americans. Those Mexican Americans who have lived in the United States for 10 years can speak English well, according to Alba, with English being dominant for the second generation and monolingualism for the third generation. Spanish is the primary language in Puerto Rico, while English is taught in most elementary schools. The Puerto Ricans speak the Castilian Spanish language, a descendant of ancient Latin. The Cuban group originated from the Caribbean land after 1959 and occupied Miami, Florida, as a place of their exile. Many political refugees entered the U.S. during the Cold War. Through reverse acculturation, the Cuban Miami occupants became accustomed to the Cuban economic system and dominance in politics rather than assimilating American cultures and language. According to Cato, the Haitian group faced racism and alienation on entry into the United States and changed the typical assimilation by adopting the attitudes and dress of the African American inner-city youths. The Dominican group speaks Spanish as their native language, although some speak English. Dominicans are familiar with the American culture and practices, which are copied at home. The group establishes Dominican American culture as a result of resistance to assimilation on entry into the U.S., and a lack of abandonment of their home culture and community. According to Buffington, the Dominican families tend to decrease in size. The community was faced with poverty, and particularly single families headed by women, who relied on public assistance in the 1990s. Americans believe that the Dominican migrants came from the poorest and least educated segment of their country of origin, and were viewed as placing burdens on the federal and state social services. These ideas have been reported as false from research conducted in the 1980s. Other systems. Education and work. The Mexican group, according to Alba, poor education systems provided to them and the amount of education are partly to blame for the group's seemingly little progress in moving up to the status of the mainstream society from their immigration status. The group does not have many entrepreneurs or a widespread ethnic economy, which is notable of the Cuban group in Miami. The Puerto Rican group living in the U.S., 25%, and the one in Puerto Rico, 55%, is faced with many problems and poor access to education opportunities. Breakdown of familial structures, crime, and drug use are encountered by Puerto Ricans despite the privileges of American citizenship. Many of the Dominicans migrate to the Dominican Republic for business interests there. The proportion of those educated Dominicans was found to be higher among the immigrants than the island dwellers, and 15,000 of those who entered the United States between 1986 and 1991 were professionals. However, a study carried out in 1997 by the City College in Columbia showed that the poverty level among the Dominicans was 45.7%, while 50% of the Dominican American households were headed by a woman. Religion. Dominicans are mixed Jewish, Afro-Christian, and Protestant, though they practice primarily Roman Catholicism. Roman Catholicism is the primary religion for all the discussed groups, but there is a variety of beliefs among the groups. Law and politics. Puerto Ricans are considered American citizens, whether born on the island or in America, either migrants or immigrants, due to the Commonwealth status. It is a Commonwealth of the U.S. Puerto Rico is governed by its constitution and legislature and has a governor. The political system, legislature, Commonwealth status, and governor, is subject to the executive authority of the United States. The Puerto Ricans have made the greatest impact in the social and political context.